Have you ever heard someone say, just get over it? Or maybe, trauma only happens to soldiers? These seemingly innocent phrases are often rooted in deep misunderstandings about one of the most pervasive human experiences, trauma. For too long, misconceptions have shrouded the true nature of trauma, making it harder for individuals to heal and for society to offer effective support. Today, we're going to shine a light on these shadows, debunking some of the most common myths about trauma history. Our goal isn't just to correct misinformation, but to foster a more compassionate, informed understanding that ultimately empowers healing and builds resilience. By breaking down these complex ideas into simple, understandable truths, we can begin to see trauma not as a permanent scar, but as a wound that, with the right care, can absolutely heal. Let's start with a foundational truth that challenges a significant misconception. Myth 1. Trauma is rare, only happens to the weak, or is limited to singular cataclysmic events. This couldn't be further from the truth. Trauma is incredibly broad and pervasive. It's not just about acute cataclysmic events like natural disasters or violent assaults, though those are certainly traumatic. Trauma also encompasses chronic, repeated experiences like ongoing childhood abuse, neglect, domestic violence, or even systemic discrimination. And crucially, it can include secondary trauma, experienced by witnesses, first responders, or caregivers repeatedly exposed to other suffering. Trauma doesn't discriminate. It affects people from all walks of life, regardless of their background, strength, or resilience. Believing it only impacts the weak is a harmful myth that prevents many from acknowledging their own experiences and seeking help. Recognizing its broad scope is the first step toward universal understanding. Myth 2. Trauma always leads to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This is another critical myth to address. While trauma can lead to PTSD, the two are distinct. Think of it this way. Everyone who develops PTSD has experienced trauma, but not everyone who experiences trauma will develop PTSD. PTSD is a specific mental health disorder with a cluster of lasting symptoms, things like intrusive thoughts, avoidance, negative changes in mood and thinking, and hyperarousal. Many people experience traumatic events, and while they certainly struggle and need support, they don't develop the clinical criteria for PTSD. They might develop other challenges like anxiety, depression, or difficulty in relationships, but it's important to understand that trauma is a broader experience than just one diagnosis. This distinction is crucial because it helps validate all responses to overwhelming experiences, not just those that fit a specific label. Myth 3. You should just get over it, or if someone appears fine, they are fine. This myth is perhaps one of the most damaging. The idea that trauma survivors should simply move on or get over it completely ignores the profound impact trauma has on the mind, body, and behavior. Trauma isn't just a bad memory. It fundamentally alters how the brain processes information, how the body regulates itself, and how an individual relates to the world. Many trauma survivors function externally, going to work, raising families, and appearing to have it all together. But internally, they may be struggling immensely with emotional dysregulation, relationship difficulties, chronic physical complaints, or persistent cognitive impairments. This external composure is often a survival mechanism, not a sign of healing. It highlights society's blind spot and the need for greater empathy and understanding. We need to look beyond surface appearances. Pausing briefly, then shifting to a more complex topic. Myth 4. You can't forget a truly traumatic event, and all recovered memories are fake. Speaking with careful consideration, acknowledging complexity.
This myth touches on one of the most debated areas in trauma research. The idea that forgetting a very traumatic event is rare or impossible is simply not true. Research suggests that forgetting traumatic events is actually quite common. The brain, in an effort to protect itself, may isolate or compartmentalize traumatic experiences, especially in situations like betrayal trauma, where maintaining essential relationships is critical for survival. Now, regarding recovered memories, this is where nuance is vital. While the reliability of memories recalled after a period of forgetting remains a topic of significant debate, some studies suggest that when such memories are genuine and independently verifiable, they can be as accurate as continuously remembered ones. However, we must be incredibly cautious. The potential for false memories, particularly when suggestive therapeutic techniques or external influences like media are involved, is a very real and serious concern. The brain is complex, and memory itself is reconstructive, not a perfect recording device. It's a delicate balance between acknowledging the possibility of forgotten trauma and safeguarding against memory distortion. Myth 5. Trauma permanently damages the brain, making true healing impossible. This is a deeply disheartening myth, and thankfully, it's false. While childhood trauma, especially if chronic or relational, can have significant and enduring effects on brain development and psychological functioning, the brain retains its incredible capacity for change and healing throughout life. This is called neuroplasticity. Healing and recovery are possible. Effective treatment doesn't just rehash past events, it focuses on building resilience, developing coping skills, regulating emotions, and ultimately rewiring neural pathways. Through therapies like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, somatic experiencing, and many others, individuals can absolutely move from surviving to thriving. The brain is remarkably adaptable, and with the right support, it can heal, integrate difficult experiences, and build new, healthier patterns. Myth 6. PTSD only affects veterans. This is a pervasive stereotype that needs to be broken. While military personnel certainly experience trauma and PTSD at higher rates due to the nature of their service, PTSD can affect anyone who experiences or witnesses a traumatic event. This includes survivors of accidents, sexual assault, domestic violence, natural disasters, childhood abuse, or even severe medical events. Limiting our understanding of PTSD to only one group minimizes the suffering of countless others and perpetuates stigma. Recognizing that PTSD is a universal human response to overwhelming trauma, regardless of background or experience, is essential for promoting help-seeking behavior across all populations. Myth 7. Talking about trauma always makes it worse, so it's better to avoid it. This myth has a kernel of truth but misses the bigger picture. Simply rehashing traumatic events without proper support or therapeutic guidance can indeed be re-traumatizing or unhelpful. However, avoidance is often a hallmark of trauma, and in the long run can impede healing. The key isn't to avoid talking about it, but to process it safely and effectively. In a therapeutic setting, under the guidance of a trained professional, gradually and carefully revisiting traumatic memories, processing emotions, and developing new narratives is a crucial part of integration and healing. It's about building a container for difficult feelings, developing coping strategies, and ultimately reducing the power the past holds over the present. The how of talking about trauma is far more important than the whether. Myth 8. Trauma-informed care means no consequences or lowering standards. With the rise of trauma-informed care, a new misconception has emerged. Some believe that being trauma-informed means excusing all behavior or lowering expectations for individuals who have experienced trauma. This is a misunderstanding of what trauma-informed care, or TIC, truly entails. TIC is about understanding the widespread impact of trauma and integrating that knowledge into policies and practices across all sectors: healthcare, education, justice, and social services. It prioritizes safety, trustworthiness, peer support, collaboration, empowerment, and cultural humility. It asks, "What happened to you?" instead of "What's wrong with you?" Being trauma-informed doesn't mean there are no consequences for actions. It means understanding the root causes of certain behaviors, responding with empathy rather than judgment, and creating environments where individuals feel safe enough to learn, grow, and take accountability. It's about balancing support with appropriate boundaries, promoting healing and fostering resilience, not enabling harmful patterns. We've journeyed through some significant myths today, from the breadth of trauma's impact to the nuances of memory and the power of healing. Each myth we debunk moves us closer to a society that truly understands, supports, and facilitates recovery for trauma survivors. Remember, trauma is a response to overwhelming events, not a definition of a person. Healing is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it into a resilient present and building a hopeful future. By continuing to educate ourselves, challenging misconceptions, and fostering empathy, we can contribute to a world where understanding triumphs over ignorance, and healing is not just a possibility, but an expectation. Thank you for joining me on this important conversation.